I'm Senator Bo Watson, Chairman of the Tennessee Senate Finance, Ways and Means Committee. This is the monthly revenue report. This month, we will be looking at the December revenues. I am joined here by members of the Fiscal Review Committee, Boyan Savage and Robert Curry. Gentlemen, welcome.
Total collections for December 2018 were approximately $1.33 billion. Compared to collections in December of 17, the actual growth rate year over year was negative 3%. However, compared to the December target, which was approximately $1.3 billion, which represented anticipated negative growth of 5.24%, actual collections still overperformed relative to our monthly target. So despite 2018 collections being less than December 17 collections were still better than we had anticipated. And as a result, we ended the month with a $30.7 million overcollection relative to the monthly target, which is good news in terms of collections continuing to be sufficient for collecting our budget for fiscal year 18-19.
Now, Rob, you reported that we had a negative 3% growth rate in this month as compared to December of 2017. Were there some specifics around that made 2017 different than 2018?
Yes, Chairman Watson, there was. In December of 2017, we had kind of extraordinary F&E tax collections as a result of some non-recurring payments. I think there was one taxpayer that made one extraordinary tax payment that was really not typical relative to trend. So we had a really high base in terms of our F&E collections in December of 2017, and that did not bore out in 2018, and that is probably the biggest contributor to seeing the negative 3% on the month.
And most of those businesses, it seemed like, were responding to the Tax Reform Act, which Congress had passed at that period of time, the first reform of the tax code in some 30 years.
That is correct. I think a lot of taxpayers were prepaying some of their taxes in anticipation of that, and as a result, we recognized substantial revenue from that in December of 2017. Switching gears to total revenue, year to date for the first 5 months of fiscal year 18-19, cumulative collections through the end of December were approximately $5.9 billion. This is good for year-to-date revenue growth of 3.68%. Comparing these actual collections to the revenue target for the 5-month period, which was $5.75 billion, and represented anticipated positive growth of 1.13%, you can see that we're ahead of the targets for the year. In other words, we were expecting 1.13% growth through December of 18, and we've recognized growth of 3.68%. Therefore, the overcollection is approximately $144.8 million year to date.
Is that on par with what we normally report at this time into the year, or is it ahead or behind schedule?
Chairman Watson, I would say it's probably on par, at least relative to the last 3 or 4 years in collections, where we've recognized fairly significant overcollections by year's end. I would say the $145 million year to date is probably right on par with prior years.
And part of the reason we tend to see an overcollection really throughout our entire budget is because we're fairly conservative in our estimates of how much our economy will grow.
Yes, I would agree with that. And with that, I will turn it over to Boyan so he can discuss year-to-date general fund collections, some specific tax source performance, and some clarity on where the state is in terms of achieving growth required to fund the 18-19 budget.
As you know, general fund is the major fund in state government, and most of the traditional state services are funded through the general fund. For the first 5 months of the fiscal year, total general fund collections were $4.75 billion, representing over 80% of our total tax revenue collections for the same time period. This also represents growth of 3.7% over last year. general fund target for the 5 months was about $4.64 billion for growth of 1.1% over last year, which means that after the first 5 months of the fiscal year, we have a general fund over collection of almost $116 million. The other 4 major funds were over collected by slightly over $29 million, and those funds include the Highway Fund, the City and County Fund, Sinking Fund, and Earmarked Fund. Once again, total revenue over collection for the first 5 months is just under $145 million, and almost 89% of such over collection comes from larger than anticipated sales tax collections. Sales taxes, reflecting the underlying strength of the economy and strong consumer confidence, outperformed our targets by about $128 million year to date. Most other taxes are roughly in line with our expectations. Franchise and excise tax is currently under-collected by $8.3 million, but that under-collection represents less than 1% of our total F&E collections year to date. To summarize our year-to-date revenue progress, the current budget for the entire fiscal year 18-19 assumes total growth of $162 million, $114 million of which is general fund revenue, and $48 million being growth for the other 4 funds. For the first 5 months of the fiscal year, we already have growth of $209 million, with general fund growing by about $168 million, and the other 4 funds growing by about $40 million. So we are certainly on track to meet the budgeted estimates for the year, and we will meet those estimates if for the remaining 7 months we do no worse than negative 0.53% growth. As a reminder, current year-to-date growth is 3.68%.
Now, Boyan, our total revenue progress through December of this year shows that we're $209 million actually year to date. They're separated into different buckets, one being the general fund and the other being all other funds. How is it that you determine that some dollars are general fund dollars and some dollars go in these other buckets?
Chairman Watson, each tax that we look at and forecast has statutory allocations of revenue. A lot of taxes are majority general fund revenue taxes, and certain taxes like our motor fuel taxes go to the highway fund. Year to date, we are seeing significant growth in sales tax collections, and sales tax is one of the major contributors to the general fund. And as a result, we are seeing such extraordinary general fund growth year to date.
These numbers reflect the first 5 months of this year. I'm optimistic that we'll finish strong throughout the rest of the year. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for the information. This has been the monthly revenue report. We've been looking at the December 2018 revenues. I'm Bo Watson, Chairman of the Senate Finance, Ways and Means Committee. We will see you next month.